Okay, hola all. Let's get back to pulling at the seams of sexuality as it stands, because it appears we have some problematic situations with the youngsters out there, the younger folk and their whole gender terminology and misinterpretation, really, of sexuality itself is getting pretty ugly. I have been informed, and I mean, this is a serious issue. I know that it's fun and games for the kids nowadays, though they do treat it with such seriousness. You know, they treat it as though it's like a real primary, a primal issue. And in a manner of speaking, it is. You know, it certainly is. Sexuality itself, gender association or identification, is certainly a primal issue, a prime value. It is in fact the base value of our structure. That's the bottom line. That's where we're coming from for the most part. Or you might say, if you're looking at it correctly, that's where we're getting at. But either way, alpha or omega, condition or solution, it is a very prime issue, and that's why we really shouldn't be treating it with such disrespect. It's a delicate edge that we're sharpening here, and it's tough to sometimes it's tough to distinguish what might be right or wrong in these scenarios. Of course, we are choosing that as we go along, but the kids treat this with such seriousness, though they are playing around, essentially kind of playing around with values that do tug at the very roots of society, and it's a dangerous game. I personally, I'm all for changing it up. I'm all for breaking the rules for sure. I mean, this is a revolution, but I mean, these are rules that I myself, that we all have a great deal of respect for, and with good reason. Kids that are watching, you kids that are dealing with the this whole 24,000 different genders, and I'm an animal instead of a person, and you need to identify me as such, or I'm pissed off about it. This you cannot up and decide to just have imaginary sexes and genders, and then punish people for using terminology that's been in play from the very beginning. We worked hard to build this terminology, the glossary of our identification, our language. It You're gonna go ahead and you're gonna try to, and it's worked in some places. It's actually become a legal matter for people to use certain terminologies in certain cases regarding people who have certain gender associative identity disorders. Really, I mean, this is, people try to say that transgenderism is a mental illness. It's a psychological or an identity related disorder. I do not agree with that. In fact, I think that's a big fucking problem that we need to deal with. It is not that at all. And people want to say that there are indeed extra sexes in play now. Well, I'm going to go ahead and state my own personal opinion. This is not the representative opinion of the initiative, of course, or the Remnants program. This is my own personal opinion. I'm going to go ahead and say that I believe the fusion of the two sexes in transgenderism is in fact a third sex, and is in fact an evolution of society. It's us taking control and taking responsibility for the decisions that we make. And yes, it's a decision to be this. If you feel that way, you feel that way. Acting upon it is a decision. Expressing it is the choice that you make. It's the responsibility that you have, and it's something you should be very proud of having the courage and will and strength of will to do. It You guys got to start taking responsibility for yourselves. That's what this uprising is about. That's the purpose. That's the point. You need to realize that this is your choice, that this is your responsibility, and that you should be proud of having ownership for it, and let your fucking owner out. Get real. Get realized. This what you're playing with here, you have this, you've misinterpreted our terminology for the most part, the younger folk, because of the way that it's been treated recently. You've gone ahead and entirely misinterpreted terminology because you really you don't know the actual meaning of it anymore. It's been lost, and this is back to that Tower of Babel scenario where we're all speaking the same or different languages but saying the same thing, and we just don't understand each other. And you're enforcing that, you're making that happen. Kids nowadays who are playing around with language like this. Language is the primary operating system of community. It's our social programming baseline. Is language, is the values that make up our interpretation of what is. And you can't just go around, we've been building this for a long time. You can't just go around and start fucking pulling words out and deciding that they mean something offensive to you now because you are having a disorder. Where it comes to having a third sex and transgenderism, absolutely, that is an obvious factor. However, where it comes to deciding that there are 14 other genders that have to do with whether you decide to be a boy today and a girl tomorrow, or whether you identify as being a raccoon or what have you, no. You need to stop that. You're getting out of line. You're fucking everything up. You're just making trouble. That's all you're doing. And it might not be a good thing. Now, where you make the mistake of thinking that people are offending your gender by using certain terminology, the fact as it stands, the reality of the issue is that you are offending our language. And in doing so, you're causing a rift, a division between us, wherein you're being offensive to our rules as though they're separate from your own. And yeah, you can go ahead and make up your own rules, but when you start making rules that divide you from the from 90% of the rest of the world, it's a mistake. It's just a mistake. You're living in an imaginary world. You're playing around with things that you're playing with fire. It's not. Maybe perhaps at some point later on, once directive relativity comes into play, we can start making some big changes like this. But until then, you need to take steps appropriately. You have to be responsible with your decisions, and you can't decide to throw the world away and to make an enemy of the world of people who understand actual, the English language or whatever language they happen to be using, people who actually understand the real meaning of it. You can't decide to divide yourself from them because somebody else taught you to be offended by a certain word. This is ridiculous. And you're making trouble. And yes, we can fit, we can make amendments, we can collaborate in some way and come to a common understanding, but you're gonna have to bear down on this language thing, because it, like I said, you're just haphazardly toying around with the values that make up our very understanding. And of course, there are reasons why you're doing this that you might be unaware of. You are loosening the system. You're attacking the construct and you're making it a little looser. You're making it pliable. You're making it malleable. But you can't take it so fucking seriously. You can't allow this to break you. That's weakness. And you kids nowadays, you are weak. I'm sorry to say, but most of you have not been trained properly. You've been raised in a very sensitive, you know, just a sensitive scenario wherein you demand that everybody treats you with this sensitivity. You demand that everybody treats you as a child, and so they have to comply because you give them no other choice. You whine and you cry about it, you make noise, you make trouble. If your parents, if the people around you, the educational institutions, if they don't treat you with such great sensitivity that you demand, you make trouble for everyone. And so, just like a screaming child, we have to feed you. We have to comply to your orders because you demand it. And now it's gotten to a point where most of you have grown up in a scenario wherein you've built no immunities whatsoever, psychological immunities, and even physiological or biological immunities, because of all this whatever it's called, the the like alcohol based products the sterilized products and such that kids or parents use on their kids, and all that shit. It's just, we're babying our environment, we're babying our people. And believe me, I understand where you're coming from when you want to make these kinds of changes and make that kind of noise. I absolutely do. And where it comes to gender and sexuality, yes, I identify. I I care about that. I understand personally. It's an issue that I have myself. I've experienced dysphoria. I am pretty kind of let down with the. I mean, I love my body. And it is pretty attractive for the most part, and it's extremely capable. But I wish I had been born a female. That would be really awesome. I'd have had a lot of fun with that if I could just be me in a female body. And of course, I could make that kind of transgender. I could be a transgender. I could choose to switch over and become a female at any point. I could choose to just go ahead and do that. That's my choice. That's the responsibility I have as a human being. I can do that, and I can take responsibility for it and be proud of my decision if I choose to. I'm likely not going to, but it's an option I have. It's the power of decision that I'm given, my God-given responsibility as a human. I can decide that, and I can take responsibility for it. Children nowadays, the younger folk, the younger generations, they are not. You need to be accepting your responsibility, and believe me, where we're headed, what's happening in the near future, you are going to need to be a hell of a lot fucking stronger than you are. You were raised to be weak, and weak and selfish and vulnerable. You were raised to be victims, and there are various values and aspects in play that have caused for this to happen. It's not necessarily your fault, but you are reinforcing it with this gender problem, with the language and all that. You're reinforcing it. You're just making it worse. So I don't know. That's what I have to say about it. I've stated my own personal opinions. Now, give me feedback. Whoever's watching, tell me what you think. I'm malleable too. I'll I'll collaborate with you. I'm not fucking rock hard, but I'm gonna be as strong as I can be, and I'm gonna fight for what I believe is right. And preserving the integrity of our human languages and our understanding of what words mean to each other and what real sexuality and gender identity actually is. Preserving the integrity of that comprehension is very important. You cannot, that this issue with you coming loose like this, it's a big mistake that can cause for us to falter, that stands at the base of our very being. And if you knock that over, it's Jenga. Boom. It all comes down. So please, you kids, you need to grow up. You need to take responsibility for yourselves. Be stronger. Be more responsible. Be careful. And fuck me, be excellent, for crying out loud. This babying and whining about things like that is not very excellent. Not very impressive at all. You want to start a revolution? Be strong. Fight for something that has integrity. Don't make up imaginary obstacles. It's just, you're just making things worse. And I understand that maybe you don't have enough experience to comprehend exactly what it is that you're doing. And so that's what we're here for. We're here to help you gain that experience. We're here to help you gain that comprehension. Work with us. Give me feedback. Tell me what you think. And if you make a valid point, I will concede. So thank you very much for watching. Anybody who did, thank you for your time. Kila Salai, Terry Uni Siari. Namaste. Forward together, all as one. I appreciate the divinity of you. I see myself in you.